Welcome back, deep divers. Today we're taking a deep dive into something particularly fascinating that caught my eye while prepping for our chat, a potential key to longevity. After sifting through all the materials you sent over, one thing kept popping up and was surprisingly consistent across various studies and populations.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. The legume connection. I was really struck by that, too, when I was going through everything.
Legumes for longevity. Who knew, right? It sounds almost too simple, but the research you provided really makes a strong case.
Right. And what makes it even more intriguing is that it wasn't just one study or one particular group of people. This link between legumes and living longer was observed in 5 different populations across the globe: Japan, Sweden, Greece, Australia. That's a pretty diverse range.
So we're not talking about some niche dietary quirk here. This seems like something much broader, something potentially applicable to a wide range of people and eating habits. But let's break it down a bit. What were the specific types of legumes that were common in each of these populations?
Well, in Japan, as you might expect, soy was a prominent player. The Swedes, they were all about brown beans and peas. And then in the Mediterranean regions, it was lentils, chickpeas, and white beans taking center stage. So quite a variety there.
Okay, so different cultures, different cuisines, different legumes. But despite these variations, there was this one common thread, this consistent link to longevity that really makes you wonder what's going on at a deeper level. Is there something inherent in legumes themselves that contributes to a longer lifespan?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And while the research you shared doesn't offer a definitive answer, it does present some compelling clues. When the researchers analyzed all sorts of dietary factors within these 5 populations, they found something quite remarkable.
Okay, drumroll, please. What did they discover?
The only dietary factor that consistently correlated with an increased lifespan across all 5 of those diverse groups was, you guessed it, the intake of legumes. And get this, it wasn't about a specific type of legume being some magic bullet. It was simply the general presence of these foods in their diets.
Wow. So it's not like you have to eat a specific bean or lentil to reap the benefits. It's more about making legumes, any legumes, a regular part of your eating habits. That's pretty huge, right?
It is. And what's even more compelling is the strength of this correlation. We're not talking about some vague suggestion of a link. The data from the studies you provided points to a rather substantial impact.
All right. Give us the numbers. How much of a difference are we talking about here?
Well, for every 20 grams of legumes consumed daily, there was an observed 8% reduction in the risk of death.
Wait, 20 grams? That's like, what, 2 tablespoons? That's practically nothing. Think about it. A can of beans is about 250 grams. So are you telling me that adding a tiny fraction of that to your daily diet could have such a significant impact on your lifespan?
That's what the research suggests. Of course, it's important to remember that longevity is a complex equation with numerous factors at play, and diet is just one piece of the puzzle. But the consistency of this 8% reduction across all 5 populations, that's hard to ignore.
It is. It makes you wonder, if we all started incorporating even just a small amount of legumes into our diets every day, would we see a noticeable increase in average lifespan? It's a bit mind-boggling, right?
It is, and the researchers who conducted these studies were pretty emphatic about the robustness of their findings. It wasn't just a slight trend in one population, it was consistent across all 5 groups.
And I even remember one of the sources you shared had a rather blunt, almost humorous statement about a bean-free diet being potentially linked to a higher risk of dying. It was a pretty stark way of highlighting just how important they believe this food group is.
Definitely. It underscores their perspective that, based on the patterns they observed in these large-scale population studies, the absence of this particular food group seemed to have a negative association with longevity.
Okay, so we've established that eating legumes, pretty much any kind, is linked to living longer, and this was observed across 5 different populations. It's backed by solid research. But then the obvious question arises, if this is such a simple and seemingly powerful dietary tweak, why aren't we all stuffing our faces with lentils and chickpeas every day?
That's a great question. And, the sources you sent over address this head on, the main culprit, the thing that holds most people back. It's the age-old fear of, flatulence.
Ah, yes, the dreaded toots. I guess you could say it's the elephant, or rather the gaseous cloud in the room. It's kind of funny, isn't it? We're talking about potentially extending our lives, but the fear of a little extra gas is enough to scare many people away.
It is a bit ironic, but it's completely understandable. Socially, it can be embarrassing, and physically, it can be uncomfortable. However, the research you shared actually suggests that for many people, these fears might be more imagined than real.
Really? So you're saying that the connection between beans and gas might be more of a myth than a reality?
Well, it's not a complete myth, but it might be overblown. One of the studies you provided looks specifically at what happens when you add a half cup of beans to your daily diet.
A half cup, that doesn't seem like much.
Exactly. And what's surprising is that a huge chunk of the participants, like a really significant portion, said they didn't notice any increase in flatulence or any other digestive discomfort.
No increase at all. That's pretty wild. I think most people just assume that if you eat beans, you're going to be gassy.
That's the common belief. But this study suggests that for a lot of folks, it just isn't true. At least not when you're adding a moderate amount of beans to your diet. Sure, some people might experience a bit of an initial increase, but it's far from a guaranteed outcome.
What about those who did have some extra activity? Was it just a temporary thing or did it stick around?
Another encouraging finding. For most of those who did experience a bit more gas, things settle down within 2 to 3 weeks of eating beans consistently. So it seems like there's an adjustment period, your gut flora adapts, and then things go back to normal.
So the takeaway here is, even if you do experience a bit of discomfort initially, don't give up. Stick with it. Your body will likely figure things out, and you'll be able to enjoy all the amazing benefits of legumes without the unwanted side effects.
Exactly. The human body, especially the digestive system, is incredibly adaptable. And here's another interesting tidbit from that same study. Some participants reported having more gas even when they were on the control diet that didn't contain any beans at all.
Hold on, so they were eating a bean-free diet and still experiencing gas. That throws a real wrench into the whole beans equal gas equation.
It does, doesn't it? And this is where the mind-body connection comes into play. It seems like there might be a psychological component involved, almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The expectation of having gas after eating beans might actually make people more sensitive to normal digestive processes.
So it's like a reverse placebo effect. If you think something's going to happen, you're more likely to perceive it, even if it's not really happening to a greater degree than usual.
That's the idea. If you're already anticipating stomach rumbles and gurgles after eating beans, you might be more likely to interpret any sensation as excessive gas.
That makes a lot of sense. We've all experienced this with other foods too. If you have a bad experience with a certain food once, even if it was just an unrelated stomach bug, you might forever associate that food with digestive issues.
And research in other areas of nutrition has shown that simply labeling a food as potentially causing digestive issues can lead to people experiencing more discomfort, even if the food itself is completely harmless.
So it seems like this fear of gas might be a bigger obstacle than the actual experience of gas for many people. It's amazing how powerful our minds can be, influencing our physical sensations in such a significant way. But what about those who truly love legumes and want to eat more than just a half cup a day? What happens then?
Well, there's another study you sent that addresses this. It looked at what happens when people add more than half a cup of kidney beans to their diet. As you can imagine, some participants did experience some initial digestive discomfort, particularly in the first couple of days.
So more beans, more discomfort. Makes sense. But was it severe or long-lasting?
Nope, not at all. The discomfort was generally reported as being mild, and more importantly, it was very short-lived.
So even when upping the bean intake, the discomfort disappeared quickly. That's reassuring for legume enthusiasts.
Absolutely. It typically vanished within a day or two, which further reinforces the idea that while some folks might experience a short period of adjustment, the long-term health benefits of legumes far outweigh any temporary discomfort.
All right, let's recap for our listeners. We've explored the research you've provided, and it's clear. There's compelling evidence from multiple global populations that consistently links legume consumption to a longer lifespan. And the number one concern, the fear of flatulence, seems to be either overblown for many people or simply a temporary hurdle that the body overcomes with regular legume intake.
Exactly. And when we look at this through the lens of nutritional science in general, there's a growing body of research and updated dietary guidelines promoting plant-based diets for better health, with legumes playing a starring role. As we've discussed, they are nutritional powerhouses packed with essential nutrients, dietary fiber, and plant-based protein.
Right, they're not just about longevity, they contribute to overall well-being in countless ways. So the message is clear, we should all be looking for delicious ways to incorporate more beans, lentils, chickpeas, and all their legume cousins into our meals.
I completely agree. And I think healthcare professionals have a crucial role to play here too. When advising patients on dietary changes, it's important to address this fear of flatulence head-on and emphasize that any initial symptoms are likely to diminish over time with consistent legume intake. It's a small price to pay for the long-term health benefits they offer.
So, to sum it all up, the nutritional benefits of legumes, as highlighted in the research you provided, far outweigh any temporary digestive discomfort, and embracing them as part of your regular diet could potentially lead to a longer, healthier life. It makes you think twice about skipping those beans on your salad or that lentil soup, doesn't it?
It really does. The evidence is pretty convincing, suggesting that making legumes a regular part of your life is a fantastic investment in your long-term health and well-being.
So, deep divers, as we wrap up this deep dive into legumes and longevity, here's a final thought for you to chew on. What's one small, manageable change you could realistically make in your life starting today to incorporate more legumes into your daily routine? Could you toss some beans onto your salad, swap out meat for lentils in one meal this week, maybe just keep a can of chickpeas handy for a quick, healthy snack? Every little bit counts. What's your one small step?
Finding sustainable and enjoyable ways to weave them into your diet is key. Remember, even small increases in legume consumption can make a big difference in the long run, as the research so clearly shows.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, happy bean eating, everyone!
Happy bean eating.